Hello everyone, welcome to the Nature Inspired podcast and the first ever video interview on the podcast. I am so thrilled that I am starting to implement these video interviews. It's really what I created this YouTube channel for. So today I am joined by Irina, the founder of FABCYCLE, which is an incredible social enterprise that focuses on reusing and repurposing pre-consumer textile waste so it doesn't end up in the landfill. I don't want to get too caught up in everything that we're going to talk about right now because that's what this episode is about. So I'm going to end it right there and let's jump right into this interview. Thank you so much for joining me on the Nature Inspired podcast. This is the first interview on video podcasting format, so I'm really excited. So before we get started, I'd love it if you could talk a little bit about yourself and what FABCYCLE is, and then we'll dig into what is pre-consumer textile waste and how that can relate to circularity.
Awesome, yeah, that sounds good. So thanks for having me here, Chris. We're here at our Textile Waste Reuse Center. Right here, if you look in on our video, you can see all the materials. So everything here is textile waste. We actually collected from our local industry, from Vancouver apparel manufacturers, just like independent people that sew, film industry, schools, basically anybody that has textile waste. And our mission is to capture those usable materials and make sure they don't end up in the landfills. And the reason we have so much is because there is that much. Yeah, there is actually that much. So the whole thing with this industry, and even like as a hobby, if you are a maker, if you sew, or if you are a business and you make clothes, you are actually dealing with a lot of physical materials. And as such, you accumulate things over time. And so if you're a business and you're in the business of making clothes, for example, so you will buy fabric over the course of your business. Mm-hmm. And once you have leftover fabric, or you have things that you're just not going to use, or even have like a slight defect that doesn't exactly match your main product, what's going to happen is you're going to be left with all these rolls or these materials that you have to figure out what to do with. Most businesses don't have the capacity to actually go and sell it because they're busy
running a business.
Yeah. And so what ends up for them to do is they do the easiest thing for them to do, which is just dispose out of it. So that's when we come in and we connect to manufacturers in Vancouver, and we just tell them, hey, we're here. If you need us, just holla. We're happy to come and pick up your materials and make sure they don't end up in the landfills. Also, when they dispose of materials, they actually pay for waste disposal fees. So we're actually saving them money by not just clogging their bins with materials that are actually usable. Mm-hmm. And we'll take it and make sure they're used. And, you know, the people that work in those companies, they don't want to waste the stuff. They don't want to dump it. Like they're human beings that see the value, but they don't have the capacity, and sometimes not even the decision-making process to actually decide what to do with it. Yeah. So when we take the stuff and we give it life, they're really, really happy that we're able to do that.
That's incredible. Yeah. That's really awesome. For those of the people who are listening who really don't understand the term pre-consumer textile waste, they've only heard about post-consumer textile waste. I feel like there's a lot of talk about, secondhand sustainability and vintage and all those kind of things, but not a lot of focus is put on what happens before it's come into clothes. If you could kind of, in your own way, give a broad definition of what pre-consumer textile waste is for those who don't understand what it is.
Yeah, I'm happy to do so. So think about it this way. So every product has a life cycle. Every human has a life cycle. Everything we have has a life cycle. So we make it, we use it, we dispose of it, or it gets recycled into something else. That's just part of how we do things. And with textile waste specifically, often when I talk about textile waste, or even when people refer to textile waste, they often refer to clothing. But if you think about the usage states, clothing is what's considered to be post-consumer waste, because it means that consumer has already used it and it's already been through the cycle. So that's why it's post-consumer. Whereas the materials we collect, it's considered to be pre-consumer textile waste because it's all the textiles and materials that being used maybe in the production process, but it's before it reaches the consumer.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the definition point. And so most of the textile waste out there, it's actually post-consumer textile waste.
Yeah.
Because people have a lot of clothes.
Yes.
And pre-consumer textile waste, which is where we're at, the fabricals, things like that, it's actually a lot smaller compared to the clothing out there, the waste. However, because the industry is so big, it's such a big industry, 15% wastage, from when you cut fabric and you have like leftover slabs. So 15% out of it might not sound like a lot, but when you talk about such a big industry, we're talking about enormous numbers, and we're talking about enormous environmental impact, enormous carbon emissions, enormous just like materials that are wasted.
And even here, like you can only see this part, right? But there is fabric over there, there's fabric in the back, there's fabric everywhere, and that's that we still, as pre-consumer textile waste, don't even cover the surface of what happens after post. So it really, I think that's why it's so important to bring up this topic, because there's still waste being happened at every stage, and that's why I think it's so important. Another question I wanted to ask you was, right now in Vancouver, I wanted to ask if you see there's an issue with recycling or like repurposing facilities, like if there's a shortage. Like for me, I've noticed a lot of sorting facilities where they'll go through post-consumer clothing and they'll sort it, give it to secondhand shops, and then the rest of it, they usually ship it overseas. But I don't really see, or maybe it's just my ignorance, I don't really see a lot of pre-consumer textile waste sorting facilities that focus on sorting fabric like you do and then actually getting it recycled into new materials. Because I know that only half, or less than 1% of clothing actually is recycled into new materials, and yet there's so much greenwashing going on with that. What do you think of that? Do you think that's a problem locally?
Yeah, so everything you just said has multiple layers of depth. And I'll try to address some of the things at least, because it's a very complex system, because it's a very old system, and also it's a very large system. So we're talking about a lot of different stakeholders, a lot of different people that are part of it, and a lot of also inefficiencies or things that are not connected. Mm-hmm. So I'll start first with maybe just a traditional industry with clothing, how it's usually being treated, how it's usually being processed, just so you kind of get an idea of how things have been going before and so far. So when people want to donate their clothes, they would give it to either a thrift store, mm-hmm. or they would put it in a donation bin and so on. And so in the Lower Mainland, we have 6 sorters and graders that operate those donation bins and just collect everything that has been donated for clothing. When they come in and take those donation bins, they take it to a large sorting facility, mm-hmm. where they separate those materials, those clothing, by quality, by category, by just different grades and things like that. Mm-hmm. And their mission, they're usually for-profit businesses, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it is a for-profit business. Their mission is to get money for those materials. So they will try to sell it first. So they will ship it overseas to whoever can buy those bales of clothing by grade, by quality, by need, for example, things like that. Warmer climate or colder climate countries, they have different requirements, things like that. So that goes to the sorting facility. Often people think they just put it in the donation bin, it's going to get recycled. It's not. It's not going to get recycled. It is likely going to get resold, because that's the financial model behind those donation bins. When something gets recycled, it's because there's a financial bottom line to it. There's a reason for that. The problem with that is that most of the recycling activity is not done because the material that you produce once you recycle is such a low value that it's not financially logical or feasible to actually recycle. It's actually, you get more money for selling the item as it is versus to recycle it. Let's say, you recycle a beautiful fabric. It's not going to be fabric again.
You have to break it down to a molecular level.
Well, okay, so that's the second part. We'll talk about recycling now. The second part for the recycling is that most people, when they think about recycling, they think that when you recycle something, it's going to become fabric again, where the reality is that it's not. is, I don't have exact numbers, but I can say with very certainty that most, I would say like on the 99 percentile probably, it's not going to get recycled or going to become another fabric. So when people say recycling, it's probably going to be downcycled into something old shoddy, something that is, it's like a fluffy material. You use it for insulation, for stuffing, for underlay, for carpets, things like that. But think about it like this, you take like, I don't know, like this fabric, for example, like we have here. This is like some kind of a pretty organza. I don't know if you can see it on the camera. Once you recycle it and you break it down, this is not going to be organza anymore. It's going to be like a blob of like fluffy material. This costs a lot more than the fluffy material. And so because of that, most facilities will not recycle because there's no financial logic behind actually doing recycling. Also, there's so much waste out there that they can recycle their own waste and then sell what they have. They don't need to recycle it. That doesn't make sense. So, but that's downcycling. There's another option for recycling where it's more like a chemical recycling, where you break down the materials and then you can recreate another fiber. So downcycling is one thing. Another is like fiber-to-fiber recycling you can do. So, for example, it's done very often with polyester. So you can break down polyester materials into a specific like chemical process, and you can make new polyester and yarn again. The problem with that as well, it's not perfect, because once you recycle something, it actually degrades the quality of the recycled material, and so you still have to introduce a lot of virgin materials to make something recyclable. So you can do fiber-to-fiber recycling, you can do other downcycling. Either way, the system is not efficient, and the end product you get with the recycled material can really hard to compete with a new virgin material. As such, we don't have the economic systems to support that. Like, you try to sell something that is lower quality, even though it's recycled, who's going to buy that? That's a problem, right? You got to have the supply chains to actually gonna buy this material. So there is a supply and demand there. So that's why the systems are a bit more complex. Not a bit, they're quite a lot more complex.
And it's so great to hear you explaining it, because a lot of people don't understand that issue. And it's still an issue that I hope, more innovation and more demand for it can make it more feasible. Because another thing is like the price, let's just say, to staff the people that will be able to, really break down that fiber into new fiber. That in itself, like, you need scientist level, employees, you need facilities, you need labs, and that's like a very big financial endeavor. And that's why I think it's so important for people to understand that it's not like the way that it's advertised. You can't just like, oh, it's made from recycled fibers, boom. No, there's like a very complex system, and it's important that you're explaining it so well, because people really need to understand that, like, if it's saying it's recycled, if they actually recycled it, they probably give a very extensive breakdown on their website of how they did that, because it takes a lot of work. And when you actually do the work, you really want to share the work that you did, because you did it the right way, right? Another question I wanted to ask you, the thing that we're talking about a lot is there's just so much waste, both from pre-consumer and post-consumer, and it's getting out of hand. In your own opinion, is there some way that you think that we could improve the waste reduction before it becomes pre-consumer waste, like from a fabric level, a brand level, if there's any like innovations or little tips in design processes that you think they could maybe design their products in a more circular way so it doesn't become such a big issue?
So from a designer perspective, you mean?
Yeah, from a designer perspective, or from a fabric perspective, whichever one you feel that you're more
like a fabric mill, or okay. Well, I think the most important thing is just awareness and the desire to learn more about the process itself. The process of becoming aware that you actually have tech waste and how much of it is it's not just like a quick process. It's a journey that every brand and every person that is part of it is taking, and it takes a long time to kind of actually, first it's like actually accept you do have textile waste, and then also there's sometimes like almost like a grief that you're really trying to like find options what to do with it, but there's no options. And then there's like almost like a grief period where like, okay, oh my God, what am I going to do with this?
I've so been there.
I so want to, but there's nothing. What am I going to do? And so I think first I think it's really important that people take their own time to really map out and outline their own processes within their own systems.
Planning.
So that's the first thing. So I think one of the really good stuff, exactly, is working with consultants like yourself, Chris, to really outline the process within their own systems. And it's not just the same systems; it's also the people that work part of it, the stakeholders, the internal and external. It's things like outlining your sustainability efforts, not just with fabric, but also with like your packaging, your marketing material. How do you talk about things? How do you measure things? How do you record things?
And and even when you do that, I find that a lot of brands think, oh my God, that's so much work. I don't know if I want to do that. And one thing I've noticed is at the beginning, it is a lot of work because you need to get those processes and those systems in place. But once you actually do it, it can actually become more of an affordable thing for you. Like it actually can save you money because then you're actually wasting less, which means you're producing less, which means you're buying less. So there's less effort and money and time put into it. So it actually can end up helping the business without even knowing it, right?
Yeah, so that's the interesting thing, is that once somebody kind of just dives into the process of mapping their own systems, it's inevitable that you'll start finding things that you can improve, not just with fabrics or textile waste, but also other inefficiencies you have within your systems, how you can improve. And it's a commitment, absolutely, but everybody can take their own pace and decide how they want to do it and how rigid or how deep and how long and so on. But I think it's a really important process because it's not just about textile waste, it's understanding your place within the system and who do you work with, how do you work with them. Do you have similar values? Do your customers have similar values? And so when you talk about creating cost-efficient processes because of that, I agree. It's not just because of the textile waste. It's because you are looking intentionally at your own processes and you're finding inefficiencies to improve them. So it's not just about that. It's like it's more of a holistic approach to your business. Yeah. And of course, you're going to save money because you're intentionally looking to make things better.
Yeah, I find that super interesting because that's the part that people don't think about. They think this is going to cost more, it's going to be more work, and it's like, no, it might for the first month or two, I'm not going to lie, like it does take some time to get used to new habits with anything, not just business. But once you have a good system in place and you've really identified some inefficiencies that are not working for you, it could actually improve your finances as well. I actually want to move more towards like the personal side, more about you and more about FABCYCLE. We talked a little bit about circularity, and I wanted to ask you, what does circularity or like circular design mean for you?
So circularity is slightly different, I think. Well, not slightly. It is different than circular design. Mm-hmm. Circular design is like an element with it. Mm-hmm. Circularity is essentially it's a system. It's an economical system for enabling different sustainability approaches within your systems. It's creating systems that from understanding those systems. So it's outlining like where your stakeholders are. What is your inflows and outflows of materials and also of other things like people, resources, and so on. And it's understanding what you can do with it, because with circular economy, what's interesting is it creates opportunities for things that are a bit out of the box, like repair, reuse, reduce, things like that, before you even talk about recycling. So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, awesome. When I first was on a call with you, you showed me around the facilities and you were showing me how you're super efficient with the way that you work. I wanted to ask, what operational or what aspects of your business have you found personally that you have found either is in a circular way or reducing waste? And I'm asking mostly because I saw how great it is, and I really wanted to give you like a space to talk about the incredible things that you're doing, not only with fabric, but like just the way that this came here, or
table.
Like,
yeah, sure.
or the boxes. Like, I'd love to hear about that.
Sure. Yeah. So our mandate here is to reuse everything we can, really give it life. So we try our best to reuse everything we can, not just fabric, but also, if we need to source something for our work here, well, first and foremost, we'll try to source it from the reuse economy. So we'll try to, take something that is waste and try not to use it in anything new. So, for example, I don't know if you can see on video. Actually, I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, you see those tubes, how, like those tubes that we have here, they're like really thick cardboard tubes.
Oh, and these ones too.
That we use to organize all our fabric rolls because it helps us kind of separate the rolls. So if we have to pull something from the bottom, we can manage that. So those tubes, those big cardboard tubes, we actually got them from a local company. They're a really big company. They make toilet paper. So they have these enormous machines that manufacture toilet paper, and they use those cardboards as like, the core, the center for the actual toilet paper rolls. So we got a chunk of them. We cut them to our size. There's a lot of like toilet paper left over, so now which is kind of funny. But yeah, now we use them, and they're absolutely phenomenal for organization. So we really try to think out of the box of like, how can we utilize what's his waste to use what we have here. Actually, most of the things we have here, it's all been sourced from locally, either like, I don't know, like factories that downsize or whatever we can find. Like this table, you can't actually see in the bottom, but it's been Frankenstein. It has like wood, it has wheels, it has metal from different parts, like a cutting table, has like a grid that is like on the wall. And then we use like, even with our packaging material, we try as much as possible to reuse existing materials. So we use a lot of just like boxes. So we have already a couple of sources of like different local companies that have their own branding on it. But for them, it's garbage. Like they just, put it for recycling, and we take it from them. Like we already have like a little agreement to get boxes once every couple of weeks, and we just use their boxes to, if we have to ship or organize our stuff. And who cares what branding is on it? Like our whole thing is about reuse. Like we want to reuse what exists. We don't need to buy new cardboard boxes. Those perfectly well boxes with some branding on it. The same thing with everything we have here. Everything here is really like, I don't know if you can see right now, but we have like sewing machines. We have super random stuff, like different like parts and pieces of like furniture that we kind of made them work for us because it's great for organization.
But I think it's great either way because, like you said, you really are acting on your values in the way that you operate as well. It's not just like, the values in how you sell your products and how you operate as a business, but you can physically see this when you come into your space, and I think that's really awesome. I wanted to ask...
Sorry, before we continue, I just want to clarify something. We are by far not 100% waste-free, yes. And we try our best to use as many sustainable materials or reuse as we can, but we're not 100% waste-free, and we strive for that, but it's really, really difficult. Like, we don't work and live in silos. We're part of other systems, and as much as we want to, we try our best. Yeah. So I just wanted to clarify that we try our best, but it's, there's always room for improvement, and that's the kind of mindset we kind of work within, is like, how can we improve? And we actually have meetings every week about that, like how can we improve different things that we do. So that's a big part of it. So I just wanted to clarify that.
And I thank you so much for doing that, because a lot of the time brands or companies will toot their own horn and not talk about like the fact that they're not 100%. And I think that's so important because like you said, we don't operate in silos. We are interconnected, and there's no way right now, like I mentioned in a previous episode, that there's no way that we can be 100% sustainable in everything that we do, like right now, because, there needs to be moving parts to make that happen. So I really appreciate you mentioning that. It really helps with like the transparency of your brand. So I want to go back in time a little bit and ask what made you start FABCYCLE? What drives you? Because I see so much passion and so much drive in what you do. And I kind of wanted to know, what was the click or the progressive movement that made you get to that point that's like, this is what I'm going to do?
Sure. So that wasn't easy, and that wasn't like overnight. It started, I guess, when I did a program with Groundswell Education Society. They're a social entrepreneurship business school. And a funny thing is they're just right now across the hall from us. It's totally so random. Cool. It was not planned, like, whatsoever. But, karma, who knows?
I know.
The universe heard us, and we're here.
That's so cool.
They're just across the hall from us now. But I did a program with them back in 13, 14, something like that. And at the time before that, I was just working like more like a corporate kind of environment. in specialty retail. And when I did the program, I was just like, I want to become self-employed. I want to have a business. I just don't know what it is. So the program really changed my life, and it introduced me to. It gave me space to really dig deeper into what is important to me, and what is interesting to me, and where I want to be. And so out of all those things, I kind of realized that I really love working with creative people. That just really energizes me. And I love beautiful spaces, beautiful things, just something that is very tangible. Yeah. So I was like, well, textile, it makes sense. I have no background in textile or whatsoever, so cool. Nothing. So I started digging into what does it mean to have a social enterprise within something related to textile or apparel. And I landed on post-consumer textile waste, clothing and repairing and stuff like that, because that's the biggest one. Yeah. And so because of Groundswell, I actually created a nonprofit called Framework Education Society.
Oh, yes.
Which is, it's a nonprofit, and our mandate is to bring back repair skills to life and empower communities. But essentially what it is, it's a grassroots organization that, and we create a space for people to come in together and learn how to repair their own clothes. Just have that ability and that empowerment of just you can sew your own button. It's not scary, it's not threatening, and we will give you this accessible and very welcoming place to come and learn yourself. So we won't do it for them. We'll not repair anything for them, because we actually encourage people to go and pay to go and pay alteration businesses.
Oh, okay, yeah.
If they don't want to do it themselves. But if they want to do it themselves, we will teach them for free. We'll give them the tools and the experience to do that. So that's Framework. But that's specifically for post-consumer, and that experience of running Framework kind of enabled me to learn deeper and deeper into the systems of how textile waste flows, where the opportunities. And so repair was a really big part of it, and reuse, because that was really that's a big part, that it's a mindset shift that is really important to do on even a grassroots level, because it has a ripple effect.
Yeah.
And so that's why I focus on that. But then and then I realized also there's other things out there. And so the more I learn about the system, the more I realize I think there's more opportunities. And so I learned more about the pre-consumer textile waste. And then I had an idea, and I started looking at things. And then in 2017, I started FABCYCLE. So I did a lot of research internally, and also did a lot of testing and things like that with some already now customers that I have. Yeah. But in 2017, launched FABCYCLE, and then in 2019, we opened our Textile Waste Reuse Center.
That is incredible. I love your story and how it happened. I really think it's inspiring, and it gives people something to think about as well for themselves. So I'm going to close it out here, but before we go, is there anything that you would like the people listening to do? How can they support your business? How can they support FABCYCLE? And what can they do to support you?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So if you are a maker, if you sew, if you craft, please go to our website, check out our especially free scrap section. We give away scraps for free, so if you want to just experiment with textures and fibers, that's a really great place to get stuff for free. Or if you're making stuff, we have highly reduced prices on the website with some discount codes and things like that. And if you are also a maker that has a lot of stuff and you are wanting to downsize, please give us a call or email us. We have some ideas for you how to do that, so nothing ends up in the landfill. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so I will leave all FABCYCLE's information in the show notes or in the description if you're watching on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me for the podcast. This has been an incredible experience, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to learn so much from this. So thank you so much. And with that, I will see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.